I think we're ready to get started whenever, so go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It's nice to see some people here. If you want to turn on that video, we'd love to see you and become a little bit more interactive between us. If not, no worries at all. A few things before we get started. You'll see that chat button at the bottom. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, feel free to type it in and we'll respond to you if we can throughout the program and then at the end if we have any time. Also at the bottom, there's that participants tab there. If you click that and you want to say something, raise your hand, hit that raise your hand button and we'll call on you and you can talk right out loud and say whatever you'd like. So before we get started, I want you guys to think about one word and it's called donation. So what does donation mean to you? And you can either type it in the chat or think about it for a second. Does donation mean give or does donation mean get? Think about that for a second. Type it in the chat if you'd like, and let me know what you think the word donation means. And that'll explain a little bit about who we are here at Donate Life. Great, gave you a second there. So what many of you probably are thinking is that donation means to give, and then of course you can receive a donation as well. We deal with the donating and giving part of Donate Life Colorado, and it's right in our name as well. I'm Brianna, everybody, and I'm the communications coordinator at Donor Alliance and Donate Life Colorado. We're so happy to have you guys here today. I'm going to explain a little bit about what we do before I transfer it on over to Susan, our transplantation science coordinator, to kick it off. So here at Donor Alliance, donation is where we help give the gift of life. So Donate Life Colorado, Donor Alliance, we help give the gift of life. What that means is somebody goes to the driver license office and they say, yes, I want to donate my organs and tissues when I can to somebody that needs them the most. Where we come into that facilitating the donation is when somebody passes away or dies in the hospital, we come in and we recover organs and tissues. We bring them to another hospital where the doctor will give them to somebody that needs them. They're life-saving gifts of organs and tissues. So that's where we come into play and where some of you might recognize us a little bit. Maybe you've seen this heart on your parents' driver license. That means they've said yes to organ and tissue donation at the driver license office. So let's kick it off here. I'll stop with the boring stuff. We'll turn it right on over to Susan, our transplantation science educator, so she can get you involved and get in with the program. Susan, off to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. The first thing I want to do is take a little poll, a little survey to see if anybody has any connection to organ transplantation. So Brianna's going to put up our poll. And there may be more than one that applies to you, so just check all that apply. And just do the first one. The second one we'll come back to in just a minute. All right. Do we have any results, Brianna? Let's see, no connection. I don't think anybody took part in it. Well, there's several ways that you could be connected. You could be waiting for a transplant. You could know somebody. There's a number of ways. Right now in Colorado, there are about 1,600 people waiting for an organ transplant. Nationwide, that number is about 110,000. So as you can see, the need is pretty great. We're adding a new name to that waiting list every 2 to 3 minutes. The good news is, on average, in the United States every day, 95 people are getting an organ transplant. Isn't that cool? Now, what organs are transplanted? We're going to put up another poll and just take a guess at it, because we're not going to grade you on this, certainly. We can only see 2 of the choices. Brianna, will it move?
That looks a little bit better or no?
Yeah.
All right, there's really 6 organs that we transplant. They are the heart, the lung, the kidney, the pancreas, the liver, and the intestine. So we sometimes say that a donor can save 8 lives. And the reason it's 8 and we just named 6 is because you've got 2 hearts and, 2 lungs and 2 kidneys that can be donated. All right, so how do you donate? Well, when you go to the DMV to get your permit or your driver's license, they're going to ask you if you want to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. And if you're 18 or older, that's your decision. If you're younger than 18, then it's up to your parent or guardian. So you need to make sure that you let your parent or guardian know what it is you want. But when you turn 18, that decision becomes yours. Now, there are some myths associated with organ donation. We have another little survey for you. Take a shot at it. Which of the following are myths? And there could be one or there could be more than one. All right, do we have any results? All right. You know, the correct answer is actually none of the above. All of these true. You can be any age. There's no cost to the donor. You want to be in good health. Most religions are glad for you to be a donor. They encourage it. So really, none of those are myths. The answer is none of the above. Now, I want to show you a heart here. I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. This is a human heart that's been what we call plastinated. That means that it's been dipped in a polymer that will coat it so that we can hold it and study it. Now, how big is your heart? Well, hold up your fist. It's just about the size of your fist. Now, you can see this heart would be a little bit big for me. And where does it go? It goes in the middle of your chest and slightly to the left. All right? Now, you have a job to do here. There was a young man in Denver who was in a terrible motorcycle wreck, and his heart is available for transplantation. I believe you were sent 2 sheets of paper, and one of them talks about the criteria and one has some photographs. The second one with the photographs are the people who are candidates to get a heart transplant. So it's going to be your job to decide which person gets that heart. Now, this decision is never based on emotion. It's always based on the facts, which we call the criteria. And you'll see the criteria there on the left. They are the age of the person, the height and weight of the person, where the person is located who needs the heart or whatever organ is being donated, because they can't be too far apart, the general health of the person needing the transplant, because even though you might need a transplant, your body has to be in pretty good health to be able to withstand this major surgery. And the last thing is who has the greatest need. So you're going to look at these 6 people here on the right. And this is a true story, but the names in the photographs have been changed for privacy purposes. There are 6 people. I would love it if you would pick out who you think is going to get the heart. And then we've got a poll for you to click on so that you can cast your ballot. In just a minute, I will tell you who actually got it. There's only 6 choices, so just take a guess if you're not sure. All right, do we have a result of any sort? Let's see. Scroll down. Somebody thought Debbie. And somebody thought Peter. All right, let me tell you, the person who really got it was Peter. Peter got it because he was the right age. He lived in the right place, but he had the greatest need by far. Sometimes people ask me what happened to the other 5 people. Stephen and Debbie did eventually get hearts. It just took a little bit longer, but their need was not quite as great. David was the firefighter who had an infection, and they just had to give him antibiotics and clear up that infection because you can't get an organ transplant if you've got an infection. The 2 little girls at the bottom, Isabella and Susan, unfortunately did not get transplants. It's very difficult to get a pediatric transplant, and only about 40% of children who are on that list actually get one. All right, I want to move to the kidney next. The kidney is the #1 organ that people on the waiting list are waiting for. Like 83% of those folks need a kidney. Now, this one right here is from an 8-year-old. And then I have one a little bit bigger that's from a 20-something. So you can see that the kidney grows as you grow. Now, you're born with 2 of them usually, but you really only need 1 to survive. What does the kidney do? Well, it works to filter out your blood, and it puts out urine. It also regulates things like blood pressure and electrolytes. Now, usually when you get one, they'll leave your old ones in. And where are your kidneys? Stand up, everybody. They're right here in the back, right at your waist, right together. So usually when you get one, they will leave the old kidneys there in the back, and the new kidney goes in the front. So you might have 3 kidneys in your body, but only one of them is working. All right, I want to move on to the liver. The liver, let me hold this up so you can see it. Let me turn it like this. And this is the gallbladder on the back. The liver is your largest organ by mass. And let me tell you the coolest thing about the liver. The liver is the only organ in our body that will regenerate itself. Now, if you've got a piece of paper there with you, I'd like you to tear off what you think 40% of it is. 40%, I'll give you just a minute to do that. All right, if you've torn off 40%, that's just to get it in your brain that you really only need 40% of your liver to survive. So say that my sister needed a liver transplant. Well, I could give her 60% of mine, and I would keep 40% of it. And in just a matter of months, both of our livers would be back to full form and function. Now, the liver is a fairly complicated organ. Some of the things it does is produces bile to help with the digestion. It also processes some of the toxins that we put in our bodies, like alcohol or drugs or something. All right. Next, I want to talk about the eye. That's another category of donation. We just talked about organs. Now we're going to talk about the eyes, and I'm going to hold up a model for you. Now, there's really only 2 things that we transplant from the eye. One is the sclera, which is the white part of your eye. There's not just a million of those done, but they do some of them. But the big star of the show with the eye is the cornea here in front. It's not the lens that's in the back. It's this cornea that's in the very front, and it works to about 75% of the focusing that the eye does. There are many of them done. We have a Lions Eye Bank in Denver, and they process corneas that go out all over our state and truly all over the United States and the world. So it's quite a large operation. Now, when you get a cornea, there's 2 things that they're hunting for when they're trying to find the perfect cornea for you. One is the size of the cornea, because it needs to be about the same size as your cornea, or maybe a little bit bigger. They can trim it, but they can't stretch it. The other thing they're worried about is the number of cells. The more cells, the better. The absolute minimum would be 2,000 cells per square millimeter. So when they do this surgery, it's not a super difficult surgery. It takes about 45 minutes. They don't even put you to sleep, and they'll just deaden the eye, and then they'll stitch the cornea on after they've taken yours off. The stitches have to stay there for maybe a month or 2, maybe up to a year. Everybody doesn't heal at the same rate. So it's very important that they don't use the kind of stitches that dissolve, because you wouldn't want it to dissolve and have the cornea slip. Now, we're going to simulate cornea blindness. If you've got a piece of wax paper, you can hold it up in front of your eyes. Now, I want to know, can you see anything across the room like a sign or something? Probably not. Could you type on your computer or text on your phone? Probably not. Can you see colors? Actually, usually you can see colors when you've got cornea blindness. All right, next I want to talk about another category of transplantation, and that's tissue transplantation. To me, the tissue donors are really the unsung heroes in the transplantation world, because if someone gets a heart transplant or a lung transplant, we might hear about it, but tissue donors we don't hear so much about, but they're so important. One tissue donor can improve or save the lives of up to 75 people. One of the tissues that they do transplant is skin. Now, normally it's from a burn. If you have a first-degree burn, that's like a sunburn, and it'll usually heal itself. If you have a second degree, that's the same thing, but maybe with blisters, and you don't ever want to pop those because that fluid in there is very healing, and that will kind of heal itself as well. A third-degree burn might be what you would get if you were in, say, a house fire, something really bad, and it just destroyed the skin. And I'm going to hold this up. This part right here is the third-degree burn. This is the first, second, and third-degree burn. Now, if they're going to do a skin transplant, it's usually called a graft, and they can do an allograft or an autograft. An allograft is where they take skin from a deceased donor and they put it on you. An autograft is where they take skin from some other part of your body and put it on your burn or whatever it is. There's many more allografts done, because for an autograft, the person has to heal from 2 sites instead of just one. So there's many more allografts done. Most people who have a really bad burn who die don't really die of the burn, they die of infection. So that's why it's so important to get that skin graft on there as soon as they can. Now, sometimes people want to know, if we're so short of organs, why do I have all these organs? Well, anything that's donated, any organ that's donated, is for one of 3 purposes. First, they want to use it for transplantation if they can, but that's just not always possible. Like a heart or lung is only good for 4 to 6 hours. So they have to do the cross-matching, they have to do the tissue typing. There's a lot to it to make sure that they find the right match. And if that match is too far away, they just can't get a heart or lungs there that fast. If it's a pancreas or a liver, it's good for about 12 hours, so they have a little more time. And a kidney is good for about 36 hours or a little more if they can get it on a special kidney pump. So it's very important that they work fast to get that organ to the recipient. Now, if they can't use it for transplantation, then it's always used for one of 2 other purposes. One is for research, and one is, in our case, is for education. I think I told you before that when you go to the DMV, they're going to ask you if you want to be a donor or not. And states track these numbers, what % of people agree to be a donor. And you know what? Colorado is the #1 state as far as the number of people who have signed up to be on the donor list. Isn't that cool? Like 68% of all people sign up to be a donor. Wyoming is not too far behind us. They're in 3rd place with 62%. Does anybody have any questions? We have just a couple of minutes here. Because we have a little bit of time here, I want to show you one more set of organs here. I want to show you these lungs. Now, let me back them up so you can see them. These are pretty large lungs. Mine wouldn't be this big. When they preserve these lungs, they inflate them and then they preserve them. And I think these were probably just a little bit overinflated. Now, how large are your lungs? I want you to take your right index finger and put it under your right collarbone, called the clavicle. I want you to take your left index finger and put it on the right side at the bottom of your rib cage. That's the length of that right lung. Now, the left lung is just a little bit smaller. Why would that be? Because the heart's in there too. So the right lung has 3 lobes and the left lung has 2 lobes. Now you might have noticed on these lungs that they're black in some places. And these aren't the blackest ones I've ever seen, but these are smokers' lungs. Now, this is the tar from the cigarette smoke that's gotten in the air sacs that makes it really hard for this person to breathe. Now, people always ask me if they quit smoking, will this tar go away? And the good news is, in about 10 years, about 70% of this tar would go away. That sounds really great, doesn't it? The bad news is there's a 80-something other carcinogens in the smoke that don't go away. So it's better to quit, but it's not exactly a free ticket to ride. We live in a state where there's quite a lot of discussion about marijuana and vaping. And I'll just say this in general. Anytime that you ignite something and you inhale it into your lungs, it's not good for your lungs. So before you make the decision to smoke or vape, you might want to think really hard about what the effects are going to be of your lungs. And that's not even talking about your brain, that's just the lungs. All right. We so appreciate you being with us today. We hope you've learned a lot, and that if you've got any questions, you will, I was trying to look up here and see if we've got any questions. I don't see any right now, but if you've got any questions, you might want to look them up or ask a teacher.
I also put in the chat a link to our Donor Alliance Transplantation Science program. What that will do is take you to a page where you can learn a little bit more about the program that Susan just talked about and walk you through a short version of it. And you can also have your science teacher bring one of our educators into your class and go through some of those hands-on experiments and some of those activities that Susan brought up earlier. There's also a digital curriculum, so you can do it right on Zoom as well. So feel free to hit that link and you can reach out to us at any time through this website as well. It's right in the chat. And we're so happy and glad that we were able to see you guys today. So thank you for joining and for sticking with us throughout this virtual time. It was great to see you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really interesting.